Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and I am so excited to be back for another Meet the Maker. If you know me at all, you know I love these chats. It is so fun to get to know people better. I am thrilled that this month I am doing all of my Meet the Makers. The whole theme of the month is pattern testing. And so this month, all of my Meet the Maker interviews are going to be with experienced and amazing pattern testers. And I am so excited to have one of my greatest crochet friends on here with me tonight, Ashley of Triple Knots Crochet. I cannot wait for you to meet her and get to know her better. She's a wonderful person and a very talented pattern tester. So let's welcome Ashley. Hello, friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. So you are straight south of me.
Yes.
Did you get the insane weather last night?
It rained here, but it wasn't like we've had some storms the last few weeks. We didn't have anything really, just a lot of rain. So, but it's been like hundreds of degrees. It's so hot all of a sudden.
Yes.
We've been melting.
Yeah, I thought that we were gonna maybe like not do that this summer with what a nice little bit of spring we had there.
Yeah.
No. But it's like
Well,
turn the corner.
Like 60 and raining last weekend, and now it's like it was 100 the last 2 days. So it has been hot here.
That is craziness. It is not quite that hot here, though it's pretty warm for
the humidity is what it has been like hard to breathe. It's so thick. So
yeah,
that's definitely been.
Yes. Yep. We had severe storms here last night, so that was fun.
Any damage or everything's okay?
You know what's so funny? We had like crazy storms and tornado warnings last night, and everything was totally fine. And Brian, we had just some wind today, and Brian comes home from work and he's like, "When did the apple tree fall over?" And I was like, "Wait, what?"
So it happened during the day.
Yeah, it happened sometime between like when I went to the grocery store and when he came home from work. That just half of our apple tree fell over. So
oh no, poor apples.
Yeah. Oh well. What are you gonna do?
Can't plant another apple tree.
Yeah, probably. It's a very old apple tree, so it's probably time anyway.
Yeah, they only last so long, it seems like. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, I am so excited to have you here tonight, and I know that I have had the pleasure of getting to know you, but I can't wait for everybody else to get to know you. And I always seem to find out new things, even about people I know well, in these. So I can't wait to hopefully learn a little bit maybe new about you. So why don't you start off by just
more new, Sarah? I'm an open book.
Why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you want, your family, where you live, your hobbies, any and all of the things.
Okay, all right. My name is Ashley Moffett. I live just south of Chicago, in Illinois, obviously. I have 4 kiddos, 5 and under. And yeah, we lived in the city for many years, and then we found out we were having triplets, and so we ended up moving just south to the suburbs, which it makes me sad. I'm a city girl at heart, but we've adapted, and it's been so nice, especially like with COVID and everything. We're in a really nice place, so very fortunate for that. And my hobbies, obviously I crochet. I've dabbled in many things though, as a lot of crafters have. Before my kids, I used to like try and do cakes, which was not good. Not good.
No?
I tried hard. I am very messy, so frosting would be like everywhere, and I'd be like, it doesn't look like the picture, but it would taste good. So in my book, that's a win usually.
Yeah,
I've done
I feel like cakes are one of those things that seem easy, and then you go to do them, like you see those videos of the people with the cupcakes, and they're like,
same with like the cookies too, and I'm like, how it's like coming out both ends of the tube, and I'm like, we have a problem. So it never failed. No matter what I did, I always ended up having like a crazy explosion of frosting everywhere. Yeah, so I'm not a good artist either, so I feel like you have to have some kind of like drawing skills, and that's I'm an expert copier, which is why I'm a good crocheter. I don't design my own things, but I can replicate anyone's, which works well with pattern testing. But yeah, so that one I have like pictures of some I'm really proud of. A lot of times it got tossed in like a trifle bowl, and I was like, look at this delicious trifle. That's literally a cake like smushed in. So yeah, we did that a lot.
That's genius. I
Yeah,
think that's a great way to like,
people just
it
like
didn't
to
work out
eat,
great,
so
still tastes good. Just,
yeah. So I did that, cross stitching. I tried sewing. I really wanted to learn to sew before my kids came along, and I took classes. And I know you do some sewing, and it's like this amount of space you need, and like I just never have had the commitment. I can crochet in my chair, and I'm like it's portable. I can take it with me. It's just so easy, and when you have kids, like you're always on the go and stuff. So it's my main thing now that I've done for many years. So that's what I really enjoy.
yeah. I really want, sewing is one of those things that I really want to be good at, but I agree. Like, you can get out your crochet and do your crocheting and put it away in a bag and like hide it away from the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But like, have, even my kids are quite a bit older than your kids. And
Yeah.
still, when I get out the sewing machine, it's like, don't touch that. Don't touch that.
Yeah.
It's
Like
just
there's
so
needles.
tempting. And it's like, yeah, there's pokey pieces, it's like
Yeah.
electronic pieces that you like, buttons they want to push, and I'm
Delicate.
like, I
Yeah.
don't know how to undo it if you make
Right. That's
something
that's my
funny.
issue too. Like the machine is definitely smarter than me. I am not smarter than the machine. It is smarter than me. And I know the one setting to make it work. Half the time I spend longer trying to thread the machine than I do actually doing any kind of sewing. So one day I say like one day when I have grandkids, then I'll be able to make clothes and cute stuff. That's in my next life eventually. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
would love to. I see there are so many cute patterns out there now for handmade
Oh
clothing,
yeah.
so hand sewn clothing. And I
Yeah.
think, and I'm like a weird, like, I'm short waist,
Sizing.
and so like even just altering clothes would be
Same. I
super
am
handy
too.
for
Yeah.
me to
I've never
know.
been able to wear like I've been almost 5,000 since I was 12 and like on the heavier side even then. So like I was shopping in like juniors when I was 8 and I was like I had to like roll like I had to like buy pants that were too big and roll them and I just like never looked like I belonged in any kind of clothing. So I definitely feel you on that one for sure. Like whether you're short or tall or like I'm kind of apple shaped. So everything for bigger people is like very busty and I'm not very busty. So
Mhm.
then it's like very big here and then tight and it's not a good situation. So but I
Yep.
do have a passion for sustainability and like handmade slow fashion and stuff. I've really since having kids especially and that kind of stuff I see the value in it. So I mean
Mhm.
I dabble a little bit in crochet garments and stuff. Eventually I hope to have a whole handmade wardrobe, but uh, one day that's the dream.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I
Uh,
also super admire those people who like go to a thrift store and then like take it and um,
make it something completely like new for them. Yeah.
recreate it or kind of
Hmm.
freshen it up. Even, some people go like way
Oh
far and they
yeah.
turn these things into like
Yeah.
these amazing things. But even the people that just like take the poofy sleeve off and make it a nice
And they
little
just like tailor
sleeveless
it to them.
dress,
Yeah.
or like it was like this big tube of fabric and they make it fitted so that it
Yeah.
looks really nice on. I'd even just like to be able to do that.
I used to follow before I got really back. I've crocheted a long time, but before I got really back into crochet and I was really looking at sewing and stuff, I followed I don't think YouTube was really the big at the back then, but she had a blog and she made something from like she made an outfit every day for like 365 days from something from the thrift store. And it was just like so I'd be like she'd get like the ugliest like carpet looking thing and then she'd make a skirt or something and it would be like beautiful. And I'm like, that is talent. Like seriously, to have the vision one and then being able to actually like replicate that, it's amazing to me. So I very much enjoy those kind of things. Even like the DIYs with like furniture and stuff, all that stuff's cool. But clothing, it just is it's its own special thing. I feel like so.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool.
And I love clothing and putting outfits together and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's fun. And like you get to wear a new outfit every day. You redecorate your living room like every once in a while.
Right.
So
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly.
it's like a fun ongoing sort of thing.
Yes. Like you're like, okay, I can't take it anymore. It's time for a refresh. So
Exactly. Exactly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your crochet journey, when you started, what you learned at first, all the things.
Sure. So yeah, I actually learned how to crochet from my now mother-in-law. Like I guess 16 years ago. My husband and I have been together for 16 years, and one of our first trips at the time they lived in Indianapolis, and we went down to visit. And I'd always been crafty, and like I did a lot of like the box kits as a kid, like the like sand art and friendship bracelets. And I was just like one of those kids. So she had like all these beautiful crocheted blankets, and her mother crocheted, and she had like baby blankets with like the ribbon around the like mixed in with the border. They were just so beautiful. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I was so enthralled. And she's like, oh, I can teach you. And like, like every yarn person, she had lots of yarn and lots of hooks. So she like sat me down and she taught me like how to single crochet. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like I was so excited about it. And um, I started off basically just making like single crochet baby blankets. Like that's where I started. Yeah. So I made
That's a lot of single
it's a
crochets.
lot of single crochets, yes, and a lot of tension issues. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot. Um, I actually, and like I think it's the type. I used to be much more type A, but like the overachiever in me, I'd get like these books and like I'm like, oh okay, so I got a book and it had like a blanket with like Care Bears cross stitch, like a huge picture on a baby blanket that was cross stitched on. And I was asking my mother-in-law, I'm like, so like is this hard? Like, do you think every time I asked her, like, oh, do you think I could do this? She's like, oh, you could totally do that. Like, all I know how to do is single crochet. And she was like, always been an enabler. She's like, yeah, you could. She's like, no, she always had faith in me. I was like, okay. And so I made like the blanket. So you make it in single crochet. And then like you literally, it's like Grafgans now, but you cross stitch it over the top. Like, and I'd done cross stitching before. So once I had that piece of it, I understood it and I could do it. But yeah, it was fun. It's funny to see like everyone's origins, and I feel like baby blankets are usually pretty popular because it's like a rectangle or a square. But yeah, the fact that I had to start with like major pictures and cross stitching on it, I just laugh now. And then one of the other ones I made was like a 3D granny square blanket with flowers. So the flowers were raised, and I'll never forget, we went to visit her once and I was like, I really want to make this blanket. Like, could you help me? Because I didn't read patterns at the time. I didn't really know too much. I'd started getting like more with the more stitches and stuff. And I was like, well, what do you think? And she's like, oh yeah, totally. And so it was even kind of complex for her because, when you're doing the 3D element, you're like taking the petals and then you have to drop those and work behind them so they lift up. And I'll never forget, she sat there with me for like 6 hours to work out the square. And then once I had it, I made all the squares, and I think I made 4 of those blankets total. I auctioned a couple off for charity for like friends things when I was in the city, and then one of my friends bought one, and she's like, "Oh, I have 2 girls. Can you make another one?" So then I made another one for her other daughter too. So they had matching ones. Um, so yeah, that's where I started, like the roots there. And now my mother-in-law and I get together, and she's always got a crochet project. And so she's like, oh, you've surpassed me, because now she doesn't really do amigurumi or a lot of garments. She's done a few dresses for my girls, but she's like, no, you got, like, I ask her about stuff and she's like, oh no, you know more than I do now. And I just laugh. So it's really funny. It's something we really like can bond over. I really like that. So yeah.
That's so cool. I love my mother-in-law and she's wonderful, but I cannot imagine that the first time that like I really spent
Yeah.
time with
I
her,
don't know.
that she would have sat me down and done something like that. That would have
Yeah.
been
I was just a very
intense.
interesting person, I guess. I don't know. I must have been like 19 or 20, I think. And I was just really into it. And she's like, sure. Maybe I asked her to teach me. I don't remember now. It's been so long. But
Yeah.
me,
That's so cool though.
I'm pretty friendly. I can get along usually with anyone. So like I'm like, oh, I love crafting. Like, and then she did like plastic canvas, like with the houses and stuff, which was really cool. Whereas I had done like cross stitch on canvas, I had never made like a 3D thing, and she used to do
Mm,
stuff like that. So I was like, that's very interesting. I never even knew that was a thing. So you learned about all kinds of crafts now, so many different ones.
that's fun. I love it. Wow. So do you have those blankets still?
I don't. I gifted one, and I think I had one that I had like the picture was all the way on. Maybe I just didn't have a border on it, and I think I donated it like a few years ago. Um, it's funny. I make a lot of stuff. I don't use a lot of stuff. I've been like on a minimalism journey this year after like COVID and being stuck at home, and I'm like, I need some simplification to my space because even my yarn stash is very impressive. But this year I've been really trying to like hone it back and like use what I have and really just choose stuff that I really like versus like what's on sale. Because when I first started, I was like, it's on sale. Like, this is such a great price. I have to have it. Yeah. And I have so much of that yarn where I'm like, okay, I can see why they were maybe moving this one out for the season so they could bring something else new in and stuff. So it's funny the lessons we learn as we go along. And
Absolutely. I
yeah,
absolutely did the same thing when I first started. And I always enjoyed the yarn when I first bought it, but sometimes when there was a big sale, I would buy so much of it that there was
yeah,
no way I was using it quickly. And as it's been like, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, I'm like, I mean,
it's might be.
eyelash, was super fun when I first started, but now I don't
You don't
want
need
it.
10 skeins of it now. You
Right. But
never
I
know.
got those 7 skeins for $1.97.
Right? Yeah. Well, you didn't lose too much money. That's how I look at it. So
Yeah, that's fun. So once you got started, have you just like kept going?
not too much. Like I said, it was my early 20s and we lived in the city. So I didn't have a ton of time to crochet. I would make blankets. Like I would make baby blankets for my friends. A lot of mine and my husband's friends are older than us, like coming into the city. A lot of them were like in their 30s getting married and then having kids. So they had kids a little bit earlier than we did. So I had lots of people to make blankets and things for. So every so often I'd pull one out and I'd make it randomly, but I didn't crochet very regularly back then. Like if we were going to visit my mother-in-law, I might make a project or start something just for us to do together while we were like sat and chatted. But and then it wasn't until like when I had my girls, so 5 years ago, when we moved from the city and I was like, I went from like a busy city life to like this quiet suburbs. And I was like, I need a hobby. I need something to like fulfill me and take, use my time. And I love crochet because I am naturally an anxious and a very like, I'm constantly on the go and it's hard for me to like just slow down. But with crochet, like the repetitiveness, I love, even to this day, I still love making blankets. I make a lot of, usually at least a couple a year. And my husband jokes like, do we need another blanket? And I was like, during COVID, we had lots of blankets. I was like, I can't stop. I can't stop. I gotta like work out the tension here. So it's moved from just like a fun hobby for me, but it's really just been like a form of self-care since having my kids and just the state of everything, like with the world and the stresses of having, 3 kids at the same time and then one shortly after that. So it's it's been kind of like my home. And then I met, a lot of friends that from it, and I've kind of found the light, myself again after having kids because you're a person before having children, then you become a mother and it's so easy to just lose yourself. And I feel like crochet actually helped me hang on to a lot of the pieces of myself, so it helped me find my way back to me when it was finally time to like kids were finally sleeping and I wasn't so sleep deprived and I had a little bit more time, and stuff. So it's been really, I love to crochet. I couldn't live. I don't get to crochet every day, especially now things are busier again. But like during COVID, especially I crocheted every day. And then even still, at least a few times a week, get to sit down for a while and just relax. So I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. And your kids are still pretty tiny.
Yes.
I'm sure they feel very big to you, but me with
They are,
my youngest is a couple years ahead of your oldest
oldest.
three.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as their independence grows, your ability to like, I go to a park now with my boys and I sit with my crochet and I
Yeah,
just sit and
that
crochet
does
and
sound
they
amazing.
right
Yeah, it does.
they do their thing, and you know it's nice
You
because
both
I
get to
can look
enjoy
up
it.
and say, you know, you can't play tag with that 2-year-old. His legs are like a quarter as long as yours. That's not fair. And then I can go back to crocheting.
You just commentary. They're like, "Hey, mom, watch this," and then
Right.
you can go back to
Yeah,
what you're doing. Yeah.
exactly.
I know one day it's like bittersweet because like I know more and more of my girls are getting very independent and they let me know about it all the time. But I'm just like every time I'm like, okay, it's fine. It's cool that you don't need me or want me. But then I think about those things and I'm like, okay, it's gonna be okay. I have this once again, crochet will come to my rescue and I will be okay because then I'll just have even more time for myself instead of the wee hours of the late night and early mornings
Yes.
when I stay up way
Yes.
too late crocheting.
You're definitely not alone there.
Yeah.
I love it. So, tell us about how you got into pattern testing? When did you start? How did you find out about pattern testing? Do you remember your very first pattern test?
I do, yeah. So I found so I was like I've always been like a late bloomer. So I got onto like Facebook late. It was someone like way after college. One of my friends like, you gotta do it. And I'm like, okay. And then Instagram, I stumbled upon it when we were out here and I was like bored out of my mind. And I was like, what, before like I was like kind of laid up because I was pregnant with triplets and I couldn't do anything. And at the end I could barely move. So I found Instagram and I love the idea because I've always been I'm a big picture taker. I'm by no means a great photographer. My feed has come a long way from the beginning, I will say that. But I really enjoy pictures and I enjoy the memories of them. I've always been that since I was a kid. I've always taken lots of pictures. I'm always the friend of the party, taking pictures of everyone and making sure to document everything and remember it. And I think it might just because I have such a bad memory that I have always been drawn to that. But so I actually found Instagram in the summer when Our Maker Life hosted their convention in Chicago. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're in Chicago. And of course, at that point, it's like way too late. People, their tickets sell out like immediately. But I was like, I know everywhere where they're at. And like my kids, I think they must have been like 6 months at that point because they had been born in like December. So it wasn't feasible that I would go. But that's when I like really found the yarn community. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And everything was just so polished and stuff versus like a lot of the crochet Facebook groups and things like that. So I was like really drawn to the beautiful pictures and like the blogs and the designers. It's like something I had never even known about before that point. I was like buying crochet books and all my patterns were from things like that. So it really kind of broadened my horizons with stuff. And so that was like, must have been in 2016. And it took a while. Like I started making like shawls. I really loved shawls and like the intricate like lace stitch. I'm a big lace fan. So stitches like that. And I don't know. It must have been like maybe 6 months, maybe towards the end of the year, like in the winter. I was like, maybe I was like figuring out what's pattern testing was back then. Nobody really talked about it. Like I love your like all your informational videos and stuff on it because back then I was so new. I was like, I don't even know what this means. Like, what does this mean? And so I kind of like started piecing things together and like chatting with designers and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not formally taught anything. Like, I hadn't really been reading patterns for such a long, very long time. So there was a lot of self doubt and stuff. But um, one of my friends, Nikki of Night Owl Knits, I believe, she was like a new designer and just like had just developed a fingerless glove pattern. And I finally worked up the courage and signed up for it. And so that's where it started. And then kind of the rest is history. I did a lot of accessories. I love a lot of shawls and stuff. I haven't made too many recently because I have like a box of them that I could never wear all of them. I love them. They're so beautiful. But maybe one day when I'm, traveling the world and in a new city every night with my, diamonds and furs and stuff. But And then like now,
Or at least when your kids are out of Velcro shoes.
oh,
That's the worst, when you pick up a little kid and they've got the Velcro shoes and like you said, it's like
it's
and you're
everything's
like,
attached. Yeah. They're winter hats. Like every year they need a new one because they're destroyed by the end of the year. But
uh-huh.
for sure, yeah. My problem is I get stuck in doorways. I don't know if I'm the only person that can't walk, but like I make a shawl, or like even I've only made a couple sweaters. Every time it gets stuck on like either the latch of the doorknob or the inside part where it latches to the the plate. And I'm like, no, like you just feel the string pull and you're like pulling it back and like, please go back into place. So yeah, I started there, and I just slowly started to gain more and more confidence as I talked to people and kind of made friends in the community. And people, especially back then, I feel like people were kind of desperate for pattern testers because it wasn't as like widely known about, I guess, or maybe, I think it kind of went through a phase where it became super popular to have your patterns tested, whereas before it was like people just threw stuff out there all the time and you got what you got, kind of. So I think like the standards rose. And so eventually, and then I learned what it was, and then I got to the point where I was like only choosing patterns that had been pattern tested because I knew the value of like trying to make a pattern that hadn't been tested and not working over and over again. And like I'm not very math brained, so like counting stitches and like I can't visualize anything. I have to work it up, and if it doesn't work, it's not always super easy for me to figure it out. And so I think part of that lends itself to pattern testing, because even after doing it for so long, a lot of times with people's stuff, I'd be like, if you're very well versed in stuff, you kind of just fly through it and you make implications to what the pattern should say, but what it doesn't actually say it. And so I think that that's probably one of my strengths, is not being like that. So I guess that's what you get lucky. I'm not the best. I'm not the proofreader. I do my best. The very blatant stuff I'm like I catch, but editing is definitely never going to be my my forte on it. But I usually am very, I think, helpful with like wording, how things sound, like taking it very literally. Like, this, do you mean it more like this? Because I think someone might get confused and things like that. So it's definitely progressed. I've taken a little bit of a step back this year just so I could. I have been trying to work on more and more garments and stuff, and even for my kids, my girls love clothes. They're girls, so even at 5 they love clothes. So I've been trying to make stuff. Occasionally I'll pattern test for like friends, but you know how life is when you with little kids, like any kind of like big commitment, hats and gloves and that kind of stuff I can do in a night, and that's not a big deal. But garments, especially even for myself being a plus size person, I have a really hard time making it in the time frames given, even when they are like, especially like with the summer, just so busy and activities and stuff like that. So my biggest thing for people is that if I say I'm going to do something, I always do it, and I don't want to let anyone down. I've always been kind of that person. So I have never not finished a test. They have been rough sometimes, not very many times, but sometimes I might be like a couple days later, okay, here's my notes, but I literally have not had a chance to like look like a human being to take a picture of it for you. So I will get it before the pattern releases, but sometimes it's just like trying to get the time in of day, like the sun's going down and you're trying to like get in before that like it happens, or I'm cutting out my face because like I haven't washed my hair in 3 days. Like you'll see if you ever look at my feed, you'll see like, oh yeah, Ashley probably hadn't showered that day, so that's a half face, but it really shows off the scarf or whatever very nicely. So these are
Hey,
the
I
tricks
think
you
that's
need.
a great tip. I mean,
right?
sometimes, if it might be a little harder with the hat, though. You
Yeah.
could,
Then you just
really
don't look at the cat. Yeah. Oh, the down
turn
one.
your
Yeah, that's
face
good.
away
Yeah.
and down.
You
But
got to be careful
if
though,
you've
because
got,
sometimes you get a double chin. You got to like look down but look away. There you
yeah,
go. And elongate the neck.
extend the neck.
Yeah.
But that's a great point. If
Yeah.
if you're doing a cowl or like mittens and fingerless gloves, that's perfect. Take your cup, hold
Yeah.
it down at your
Uh-huh.
belly.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And then cut your head off totally, and you
Uh-huh.
don't even have to do your hair.
For sure. Yes. That is probably my number one tip for everyone out there, that even if you can't take great photos, you just cut half your head off and focus, center your piece or whatever it is that you're working on, and nobody cares if they can't see your head. So
Do you have any tips for people about like how to choose pattern tests? Like when do you think, oh, this is good for me and I really can work it in, and when you think, gosh, that's gorgeous and I'd love to, but I just know it's just going to be added stress?
yeah, so that's one thing I learned. I think it takes a while to learn, because it's kind of like addictive. Like you kind of get on a high. Like you're like, during COVID when we were home all the time, I had a lot more time, and so I was having 2 or 3 tests at a time, and I was like starting to get stressed, and I was like, shouldn't be that stressful. I'm like, okay, like I had to take a step back a little bit and think about it. In the beginning, I was just so flattered to be asked a lot, that I have so many friends in the industry that I'm always like, I love to help as much as I possibly can. And quick stuff, it's just so quick and easy. Like I've done so many hats and gloves, and those things are nice to donate. So I feel like they are at least going somewhere well. The problem is like when you're constantly making and you're just filling up totes, which is what I was doing. And I'd have totes and totes of stuff. And back then I wasn't doing markets or anything or trying to sell. And so part of me is like, is anyone going to really value this if it goes to just a thrift store? And like, where else could it go to? So I think loving the pattern is like the first step. Like if you love a pattern, the second step is like, you have to know yourself. Like for me, I love a challenge. So as long as I have the time, like usually in the winter, it's a little bit better, because every day of summer is like another crazy thing, or it's 100 degrees, and I don't like to crochet when it's really hot. So like in the wintertime, I'm much more likely to take on a more challenging project, or a project where I've never done the stitches before. Like a lot of times it's a stitch pattern that I've done and I'm familiar with, even if I have to go back to YouTube and like watch the basics. It's not like completely new to me. But like I said, I'm a sucker for lace. So anytime there's like the lace shawls, it can get a little complicated with the counting and the repeats. And when you're making like a V or like the asymmetricals, it can be very, you have to focus. And so like you should be at a good spot where you're like, you can really focus to give the best feedback, because it takes everyone's time, right? You're taking your own time. The designer is depending on you to create a great pattern, so other people can enjoy it too. So I don't take that lightly. I never have, just because I love being a part of the process. And I think it's important, like you're helping other people kind of in a way, I think. So that's my biggest things. I think you should just choose what you love and know your constraints and the time you have. Like for me, like, I have friends that can make a garment in 3 days, like, and I'm like, you guys are amazing. It blows my mind every time. But I know myself, like, even 6 weeks for me, because for me, not having a very standard body, there's a lot of frogging, there's a lot of trial and error, especially if it's the level of the designer, how long they've been designing, like, because I have tested for people who are just starting off, and it just didn't work. And I wasn't good enough at pattern testing garments to be able to tell them why it wasn't working. I could just say like, it's not fitting right. I can't, that's all I can give you. And I don't know that that's super helpful. Whereas a lot of other people.
No. And I'm okay. I'm going to say this.
Okay.
And so I just released my next information video today too. And I talk about pattern testing. And one of the things I say is that I think you should never feel bad if all you can say is there's a problem. Because that's your job as a pattern tester. Your job as a pattern tester is to say, I got here and there seems to be a problem.
Yes.
And it is the designer's job to say, okay, I got to figure it out. They're the one who worked with the stitches and worked, all the things. And so I think there's huge value in saying this is not working, and you should never feel badly if if you can't figure it out.
If you yeah.
That's the designer's job.
Everyone would be like, "Oh, you should design, Ashley," and I'm like, "That's just not my brain," and I'm okay with it. Like, I'm totally okay. I appreciate the heck out of designers. Seriously, they blow my mind time and time again with every all the beautiful designs that come out, and I'm just like, I have a library of patterns that will last me till I cannot crochet anymore. So, I do, I try to be over helpful, so I think of it that way. But I also think of, like, for me, that when something isn't working, I will try and try and try. So you are spending a lot more time on something like that. That's a lot of surface when you're doing garments and things, versus, if a hat doesn't work, it's a lot quicker to, like, I could make 3 of them in a night and, can say, like, here, this is where it doesn't fit, or here's where it's not working, or you might need to make it longer or wider, or, those kind of things. So, yeah, I do appreciate you saying that though, Sarah, because for sure, like, everyone starts off somewhere. You just have to kind of take the plunge and start. That's what I did. That's what all of us do. And a lot of us are self-taught from YouTube, or like someone's grandma taught you, or your aunt, or mother, and these kind of things. And so you start with the knowledge that you have, and then, like, the beauty of YouTube is that you can learn anything. Like, these days, it's amazing. I just look back and I'm like, I don't know how anyone did anything before YouTube, because I YouTube stuff all the time, but especially with crochet, I can make anything, and I feel confident that I could do it. So, I would say, like, just step out of your comfort zone and do it. And like I said, most of the time, as long as you have a lot of communication and stuff with the designers, they are always very understanding and very helpful, because they want to be as helpful to you as possible, so that they can, help you get through the design. They want to, they want to see it. They want to make sure it works. They also want to, be able to market it once the pattern releases, because I'll tell you what, the designs I see in multiple variations with different colors and styles, and, like, garments on different sizes, I don't buy garment patterns if I don't see them on bodies like mine, because it's hard to, you can't just always size up. Like, sometimes that doesn't work. And even still, even sizing up, all bodies are different. So just because it works on, different sizes, it might not work, for someone that's not as wider at the waist than they are at the top, like me. So, and it's a lot of time and effort and money, especially once you get to the nicer yarns and stuff for garments. So you have to be kind of choosy. So that's what I do.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I think pattern testing is such a great way to learn things. Almost always, every test I've worked on, there has been a huge range of experience within the pattern testers themselves. And when there's a really good chat group going on, a lot of times other testers will chime in with ideas and suggestions, and, like, in my experience, try this, or have you heard of this technique, or have you heard of,
golden
like, I
loop.
remember I learned about a golden loop on a pattern test from another tester, and I was like, wait, what's this? It can be a really great way to just generally grow your knowledge.
Oh, for sure. I would say it grows your knowledge, and it also pushes you to finish things. So, like, some people, me included, like, when I have a deadline, like I said, I am committed to doing what I say I'm going to do. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, Ashley, why did you say you were going to do this? But I do it, and then it's done, and it's beautiful, versus, a lot of, like, serial whip starters, a lot of times they tend to be testers, so it forces them to, finish some things. And I'm like, I can totally relate to that. So
yeah, I think if you're somebody who finds yourself starting and not finishing things again and again, and you really would like to finish things, pattern testing is great. If you like the pressure of a deadline like that, it can really be motivating. I think every garment I've ever made that I got done in a reasonable amount of time was for a pattern test.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think also the beauty of pattern testing, like you said, now with, like, the Instagram groups and stuff, one, you're meeting other people in the community, which is so fun. It's fun to meet people, like-minded people that are into the same thing that you are, have the same hobbies. But, it's another way to just branch out and, put yourself out there and learn new things. And it's most of the time, it's always wonderful to really like get the hive mind of, you know, different things. Or if you're not understanding stuff, you have multiple people to try and help you, like to explain it to you, because we don't all learn the same way. So I find them I like them. They're very beneficial for me usually, because it's not always like straight and narrow for me. Like, oh yeah, I get you. Someone says it to me and then I have it. Like, I'm like, I'm still not getting it. So I'm like watching a YouTube video or chatting with someone else or asking one of my friends that has lots of crochet experience, like what they think of and their knowledge on it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I love the point you made a little bit back about testing certain things and then donating them. I think that's a great idea, because I agree. I feel like a lot of crafters get to a point where you're kind of looking around and saying, like, I only have one head.
Right. I still
and here are 30 hats.
Yeah, I have so many favorites.
Right. So that's a great thing to say, like, I'm comfortable with and I enjoy making hats. And so I'm going to test hats and I'm going to donate them all to a local cancer center or a local shelter or to Hat Not Hate or something like that. And combine your love of craft and your love of pattern testing and being able to be generous and donate like that too. That's a great combination.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like it gives you a little bit of purpose too. Like, I love Hat Not Hate. I love the message, and, definitely the whole mission behind it. And so, yeah, I started the first year, which is the year I think I started on Instagram. They had launched and it was very small that year. And I think I made 3 hats and sent it in. And then the next year I made 20 hats. And then the next year I made 40 hats when we did our stuff. Yeah. So when the Crochet Miss crew did theirs, when we were a part of it, I tested a bunch of designers' hats and I made multiples of them, and then I sent them in, and it just feels so nice. And I think this year they even have drop-offs in every state, so you don't have to like ship them now. They're doing it like across the US, which is amazing, I think. So definitely you have a sense of purpose then. It's like, do I need another hat? Does anyone really need a hat? So like, I'm kind of a realist sometimes, so I'm like, this is beautiful, but like, is it going to just sit in my box and kind of make me sad? And so I had gotten to that point where I was like, I kind of was at a standstill because I was making so many beautiful things. And I just, like you said, you just only have one head. You can't wear it. And, let's be honest, I have 4 kids that are toddlers. And most of the time I'm lucky if I even have a coat on, let alone any kind of winter gear. I could put a hat in every place every part of my house and my car and my husband's car and, friends and stuff. And it would never get on my head. So, that's like the hardest part. I'm like, outside freezing, I'm like, I literally make hundreds of hats. How do I not have one on my head right now? So.
I love it. That's great. And I think if you have something you love to make, get a little creative with donating stuff. There's lots of maybe more obvious things for hats, but there are certainly places that would take mittens, scarves, and even blankets probably.
Yeah. So another one I've donated to is Warm Up America. And I actually donated like 2 boxes of Shawls that I had for like 2 years. And you can like check out their website. They have different like requests for things. I think they're based in Texas, but they send stuff all throughout the US. And so like I had all these shawls, and I'm like, I paid a little bit to ship them, but I felt really good about it, that it was going to go somewhere and someone was hopefully going to love it after all the work I'd put in. But like I said, I still have a box full in my closet of my absolute favorites, that get worn occasionally. But I had just so many I tested, and so many I loved making them. But it was making me sad that they were just kind of sitting. And so I was even able to donate shawls to, I don't know if it was nursing homes or churches or what, but it was I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Like they're going somewhere useful. And then another year I did blankets for like the cancer programs here. So they would look for wheelchair blankets. So the smaller sizes. And I think I did maybe 10 or 12 of those one year. Just, I got the yarn and I got the time. A lot of times I need something to fill the time. So that's another one. There's always places looking for donations. It's just, sometimes you find like Project Linus, I think is one for baby blankets. Like they're just all over the place. And being near Chicago, and even probably for you guys, I know you're not super close to Milwaukee, but that's another big hub, I feel like, where they have a lot of need and they accept a lot of like the donations in the bigger cities. So,
and hey, nursing homes are great places to donate because you know those ladies appreciate it.
yeah, even yarn. So that was my other thing is that as I've gotten more picky with my yarn, I've tried to like tone it down. Sometimes there's those loud variegateds that I was like, why did I think this was a good idea? Or like the color changing that just never quite works very well, where it's like in the middle and you have to cut out half the row or whatever. So I found some nursing homes near me that will take the yarn too, because, a lot of seniors in nursing homes are on like fixed incomes and they can't afford crafts, but they still love to knit and crochet. And so I really am like, at least I feel good about it. I spent the money on the yarn, but it's going to go somewhere and hopefully someone's going to get to use it versus, it going somewhere random. I think about like the sustainability aspect of like the yarn stores being filled with all these specialty yarns. And at the end of the year, like giving them away and like where they're going to end up eventually. So at least that makes it feel a little bit better about it and where it's going.
Yeah, probably brings a lot of joy to the people who are still,
I hope so. Yeah.
Finding comfort in their craft.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Forever.
So what are you working on right now? Are you testing anything currently?
I'm not testing anything currently. I have done a couple really cute bags this summer. I've been on a bag kick. I've been waiting on a couple of like the granny square. So I have a love-hate relationship with granny squares. I have about 50 of them sitting over here that needs to be made into a blanket that have been sitting here a long time. I love making granny squares. I do not love seaming granny squares. So I'm like, well, maybe if it's a bag and there's only like 20, it won't be so bad. Well, I'm going to test that theory at some point this summer, but I haven't got there. But I'm working on a cardigan for my mother-in-law who taught me how to crochet. Her birthday's in July. And since she doesn't make garments, I thought maybe it'd be fun to make one for her. I found some like yarn that I was like, I think she would really like this. So I'm making the lilac cardigan from Woodland Stitchcraft. And let me see, I got it over here. You can just kind of see it's a beautiful purple shimmer stellina.
Oh, so pretty.
Yeah. So I've just about finished. And I think then the next step is for me to make one for me. So this is my trial run, and then I'll have another one that I can wear too. So
I love it. I love it. That one's on my to make list as well. I have the yarn and everything.
I know.
Just gotta find the time.
The yarn, and then I was like, well, I've had the yarn for so long. I'm like, do I really want to use it for this one now? And now I have like lots of options, and I'm like, oh, Ashley, why did you do this to yourself?
Right.
I'm always buying sweater quantities of something. I'm like, yeah, eventually I'm going to make a sweater. I'm like, I make a sweater a year if I'm lucky.
I know. I think I have at least 4 sweater quantities of yarn. 5, 6.
I just bought a bunch more everyone's clearancing off their yarn now, usually in the summer, so they can bring out their new stuff in the fall. And so I haven't really bought yarn this year. I bought a bunch of comfy cotton from Lion Brand a couple of months ago when they had a really good sale, and I was like, I really like comfy cotton. And then I hadn't bought any other yarn this year, which I bought a lot of yarn during COVID. So I've been working through a lot of yarn. But yeah, I just bought a bunch again. And I'm like, well, at least I have some space for it now. Looking on the bright side.
What are your favorite things to test? Do you have like a preference of or does it change based on season?
Or with the seasons? I've tested so many shawls. I still love shawls. I love them to death. I think they're beautiful. I think they're stylish. I know some people are like, they're kind of granny, or like if I tried to ever give a friend of mine a shawl, they'd be like, what am I supposed to do with this? But I love them. I always will. I probably would have been better in a different era, I say. So, but so my journey started a lot with Shawls, and I really, really I still make them occasionally. And then it went to hats. And the funny thing is that it took me like like every crocheter, I feel like goes through a long spurt of like figuring out gauge. And on your own, it's really hard to figure out gauge. And so for years, I would try and make hats and they would never fit. And I didn't understand gauge. And so I would get so frustrated. And I'm like, why? How do people do this? Like, people make hats. It looks so easy. And then as I got into testing and learning about stuff, and like, the doors opened up and I was like, oh, that's why hats don't fit, because I had no idea I was supposed to be matching gauge. And then eventually that led to garments as well. So I did hats for probably for like a year. I was like making them nonstop crazy. And then now I really like to test, like I like to do a lot of the kids, more kids garments and stuff, or like the smaller things. Not so much testing, but I do like to make my kids amigurumi. They're all about stuffed animals and stuffies. So it's hard on my hands, so I don't do it as much as they would like me to, but I find it fun and it's kind of a challenge to like make it look like the person. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of an artistic ability to do it, whereas like when you're replicating any other pattern, it's not quite as difficult. But when you're like trying to put eyes on and like make facial features, it's a lot more difficult. So
you're almost trying to give personality to them. You don't want your like bunny to be like grumpy.
Yeah, like sometimes they're cute, but yeah. My problem is always seaming. So you have like you work so hard on all the pieces, and then you have like a lopsided bunny, and you're like, well, darn it. So
dang it.
Yeah, but I like accessories a lot. I always have. But yeah, I think I pretty much tested everything. I've dabbled in Tunisian crochet. I'd love to learn to knit one day. I keep saying that every year, but I haven't gotten there.
We'll get together
one day. Yeah, I will. I have the knitting needles. I've made like some small swatches, but my crochet brain, it's like the muscle memory. I'm like, well, I don't know which way this is supposed to go. So I will get there. I'd love to be able, like I said, make, sew for my grandkids one day, but make also the beautiful color work knit sweaters. I think they're so amazing. And I just like follow knitters just to look at their beautiful like things. And it just blows my mind every time. I'm like, how do you do this? It's just amazing to me. So I like to make everything. I am an eclectic maker. I always have been. I just go wherever the breeze takes me, and like I'm like, oh, I like that, and then I just decide I'm gonna make it. Like this year, it's been bags, and I've never really made bags before. An occasional like market bag or something, but yeah, that's what quick and easy and fun, and just so many cute ideas and things. So that's what I've been doing.
I love it. All right. I'm going to do a little this or that. All right. Okay. Do you like books or podcasts best?
So I'm not a podcast person, but I do mostly audiobooks. So like I listen while I crochet. I haven't read a physical book. I used to read 52 books a year when I was in my 20s. I would like challenge myself, not super deep stuff, but I would at least try to like read fun stuff for fun to like keep myself going. So I used to do that before my kids and stuff. I love reading, especially like fantasy and stuff like that.
Do you miss reading physical books?
I don't. I didn't have a physical attachment. Like I didn't have an attachment to it. Yeah, I love I think I'm just like, I might have some ADD. I don't know. I love multitasking. So I'm like, this is amazing. Like I'm making like whatever I have at the end of I have listened to something. And I had found that I never used to be able to listen to audiobooks. My mind wanders too much. But if I'm crocheting, as long as it's not like something super in depth, if it's a repeat or something, I actually listen a lot better if I am crocheting, because my mind is focused on the words instead of a million other things on my to-do list and things like that. So
Uh-huh. Yep.
yeah.
I totally understand that. I love it.
It just doesn't shut off. I can't shut it off.
I know. I feel you there. Are you a sweater or a cardigan person?
Cardigans forever. Yeah. I'm a warm-blooded person, so layers is like the way for me, I think. For sure.
If you're grabbing for a snack, are you a sweet or a salty person?
I love all snacks equally. I would say probably chocolate. Chocolate's my downfall. But I love a good like popcorn or the Chicago brand where it's like cheddar and caramel popcorn, probably my favorite. So you get both. You get the salty and the sweet there.
What's your favorite thing to drink while you work?
Ooh, I love a good light beer in the summertime. Occasionally I'll have like a Diet Coke or something. And I also try to hydrate myself with water. I'm not a big hot drink person. I wish I was, but I'm not. So something cold.
I love it. I love it. What's worse, swatching or weaving in your ends?
Ooh, both. Probably swatching. I would rather weave in ends.
Yeah.
Swatching, I feel like it's like you just keep going and my tension changes like all the time. So I like make one swatch and I'm like, okay, this time it's this. And then I make another swatch with a different one. I'm like, it's the same. How did like it change between the same hook? Like this hook's a size bigger, this one's a size smaller. The swatches are still the same somehow. So that's the story of my life, basically.
Yes, gauge swatching can definitely be a big challenge.
And it's so time consuming, I feel like, because you have to make it bigger and like to really get it good. I don't tell anyone I do this. I don't do this when I'm pattern testing, but I a lot of times start like garments first and then I measure a few rows in because that's where I feel like my tension is the most normal. So I find that much more accurate than when I try to make it. I feel like I tend to crochet tighter because I want the swatch to be done faster. I don't like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I kind of anxiously crochet it versus if I just start, a lot of times I can kind of go from there. And it's nice because I have tested so much for certain people and things, I know kind of where I'm at compared to certain designers. So that's a one perk once you like really get going and if you test for the same people over and over again. So
yeah, I love that.
A little cheat.
yeah. And I agree. Sometimes just starting a garment can be the way to go. You're definitely risking major frogging.
More frogging, for sure.
But you're also maybe going to hit it spot on and you're good to go.
And I don't recommend it if you're not familiar with the person if you have no baseline, then it's not a good idea. But if you start it and it's only like a half a hook size, then you're like right in the ballpark. And so, it's really not that much, especially once you get to these bigger swatches and things. It's like if you're making like the back panel of something or, even a shawl, you're starting across the top. It really isn't that much more time to just do 2 or 3, 4 more full rows to really get an accurate picture. And like once you settle yourself into the rhythm of the stitches, then you're much more likely to catch your real gauge, what it's really going to be versus like, oh, that's great, this is what I meant gauge with when I swatched. But it doesn't matter if once you start it, it's different because that swatch means nothing at that point. It's not really what you're doing. So that's why gauging is so tricky, I think.
It can definitely be tricky. And you're absolutely right that if you are stressed out about making your gauge swatch, that it can change your gauge within your swatch.
And if you're
not be accurate.
You've done it 2 or 3 times, like once you start getting to like past the 3rd time, then I feel like the heat starts to rise and you're like, why isn't this working? And then it's not a good situation for anyone. So
yep. You got to know when to walk away.
Yes, for sure. And I even with the golden loop and stuff, pulling my yarn always tight, pulling up higher always tightens this way. So I just know it about myself. I cannot like get both ways to go. And there's just some designers I've tested for where I struggled along and I really did my best. And then I said, okay, in the future, I don't think this is a good person for me to test for, because it's too hard and it's too stressful to try and meet their gauge, because they're pullers, or, I think I'm more of a writer. So I'm kind of right in the middle. So yanking it tight is always easier than lifting it for me. So lifting it still makes everything shrink widthwise. So I know that about myself.
And that's hard. That's something you only gain with experience. And you're absolutely right. There are some people, not personality wise, but crochet wise, that you're just not compatible with.
Yes.
Just the physical movements that they do are different enough from yours that it's just really challenging.
That's okay. Like that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it's just, and a lot of people, like, if you're not testing and you can modify it, like adding more rows or whatever you have, like usually that's the case. If you need to lift your yarn to make the rows higher, you can usually just add more rows. If you're not testing, if you're testing, obviously you want it to be as close to the person's as possible. But that's something you can know about yourself when you're just making patterns that you want to make and stuff. And then, like I said, as you make more than one pattern from a designer, you might then have an idea. Like I said, you have ideas about how everyone writes their patterns, because they're not always the same, and like the language and just the format and different things. Everyone's are kind of slightly different. And then also just their techniques, how their gauge changes slightly. You have all these stitch definitions. I always read the stitch definitions, because what someone calls one thing might, a bobble versus a bean versus a puff. And like, I always read it, because what I think would be 7 or 9, they're only doing 6 on that one. And so it's going to affect your yardage, and 2, it's going to affect the look and, how dense they are. So that's another big tip I would give, is like, even if you know that stitch, I would always make sure you read it from the pattern in the special stitches, because it's not always the same. Everyone has their own things. Everyone's been kind of taught a little differently. Some people go from like UK terms to US and like kind of use them. They go interchangeably. So then it affects their pattern writing if they do dual things like that a little bit. So it's better always to check.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, it has been so lovely talking to you. I appreciate you sharing about your testing experience and all of that. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I had so much fun. I could talk forever. So
I know. And we will. Yes. I love it. Well, thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Oh my goodness, so much fun to talk to Ashley as always. I did learn new things about her, which is always fun. And so check out the description below this video. I have links to Ashley's Instagram. You should definitely go follow her there. She makes all sorts of beautiful things. And I would love it if you are interested in pattern testing, gauge swatching, yarn substitution is another challenging thing. Check out my other videos on my channel. I would love it if you would subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications, and then you'll get notified through YouTube when I do more of these Meet the Makers, and you can meet some more wonderful makers. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and happy crafting.